Hi guys, welcome to the Deep Rooted Self-Love Podcast, episode number 4. I hope the lighting in this is better than in my last podcast for the ones that are watching the video. Let's say the last one was less than average, but yeah, trying my best over here in between taking care of my baby and navigating things with Nico. Right now he's out with him and I have some time to record this podcast. So today I want to speak about something that is really important to me, as this is what all my coaching is about. It is self-love, but it is self-love. I want to make this podcast about helping you understand that self-love is not just taking bubble baths and doing your nails once a week, or I don't know, going to the spa, even though those are really nice parts of taking care of yourself and loving yourself and stuff. I would say it's probably a way of self-care, which goes underneath the branch of self-love, but there's so much more that belongs to self-love. For me, self-love is a true way of living. And self-love is not just celebrating the parts of you that are great, right? That you learn from societal programming, your upbringing, I don't know, maybe even religion for some people, what is lovable and great about you, but also knowing and seeing and integrating the parts of yourself that you consider not lovable or that you used to consider not lovable, and seeing and loving all of those parts, right? So just to give you an example from my life, when I was younger, I oftentimes grew up with shame around being too comfortable, for example. My mom used to literally say to me, you're just like always so comfortable, like kind of shaming me for not being more ambitious or for not being more fiery. My mom is one of the most fiery people that I know. I mean that in a really good way as well. But I grew up with this wound almost of I need to work hard, I need to push harder, I can't just be comfortable, I need to always achieve the next thing. And that wasn't good for me, that wasn't authentic. And I had to work through a lot of shadows to integrate that being comfortable is also beautiful, and that is my superpower, that I don't actually burn myself out. I think I've only had burnout once in my life, or there's different stages of burnout, right? And I think I've only scratched the first scratches of burnout once in my life, and that was from bored out. That was not from burnout. That was because I was in a job that wasn't stimulating me enough. That was in a job where I was done with my work after 2 hours and I still had 6 hours to go, and I was like, what am I going to do with myself? But I don't tend to go over my self-care limits in order to make money, in order to work, in order to be ambitious or whatever. And that was such a big wound of myself. I felt so ashamed of that part for a really long time. But now I'm at the point, and there's always a little bit more to go, but I'm at the point where I'm so proud of the success that I've made in my life, achieved in my life, from still being healthy, from taking care of myself, from taking weekends, from taking time for myself, from doing the things that I love. And there's been so many things that I said no to, like certain retreats or job offers, because they just didn't feel aligned with me, because I realized that they weren't good for my energy and they would burn me out. And that is something that I used to judge myself for. Why am I not pushing through? Why am I not working harder? Why, I could be already here with my business or whatever. And in hindsight, it's the best thing that I've ever done, because it's so sustainable. And it's just one example of how self-love can look like, right? The opposite of self-love, so self-criticism or even self-hate, would just be me going into burnout and going completely against my authentic nature of comfort, just because I learned that that's not lovable. And I really had to learn that that part of me is also lovable, and that to reframe that. And you can do that with everything. Anything, I promise you, that you can think of right now that you're like, oh, I hate this about myself, or oh, I'm ashamed of this, I don't want people to find out about this. This is a way how you can find out your shadows or the parts of you that you still need loving. So asking yourself, what are you most afraid of people finding out about you or your personality? If there was a newsletter coming out, and to all the people that you knew, and in the headline it says, I don't know, I'm just going to call you Sabrina right now. I don't know why that name comes to my mind, but Sabrina is so dot, dot, dot. Like, what is the word in there that makes you feel the most uncomfortable? And that's the first step where you can learn to integrate and where you can learn to, deepen your self-love for yourself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I just wanted to give that example, and that really came up in my mind. And there's a ton of other examples, right? There's so many things that I needed to learn to love about myself. And in the end, if you learn to love the parts of yourself that you learned weren't lovable, you really learn to get authentic, because that is your authentic self, right? Like, I'm different to my mom. That doesn't mean that I'm better or worse than her in the way I approach certain things. It just means that I'm different, and that's my authentic self. And my authentic self is going to make me happy in my life, and it's going to bring the things into my life that I want, right? I don't want a completely full schedule. I spoke about this with my friend the other day, who's also someone who's like always has plans and always like schedules things. And if someone cancels on her, like her whole day is like screwed up, and she's like, oh my God, what'd I do? And I, same as Nico, we're the exact opposite. Like, on the weekend, we need at least one day where we have zero plans, where we can just wake up and move into the day and see what happens. So again, this is the real self-love, looking at the parts that you think aren't lovable about yourself and then integrating those and empowering those so that you can live your most authentic self and celebrate that. Because again, it's always the same thing, right? Like, trying to be someone else won't work. Like, everyone else is already taken. So try to come to the deepest, most core authentic self that you are and celebrate that. But for that, all of us have to heal so much shit from our childhood. Okay, and then the next part of self-love, and this is where I focus a lot of my work on, is when you love yourself, other people learn to love you the same way you love yourself. The way you love yourself is the way other people love you as well. And that doesn't mean that when you love yourself, everyone that's currently in your life is going to start loving you the same way that you are learning to. It just means that the people who don't love you in that way are going to fall off. Maybe some people are going to like change their way of relating to you, but it means that you're going to attract a lot of people that are able to love you the way you love yourself. And this is what I say also always to my clients in my classes. The relationships in your life are always a reflection of the relationship that you have with yourself. And this has been so true for me and for my clients, for my boyfriend, for everyone that I know, is when you have people in your life that are not respecting your boundaries, that are taking advantage of you, it's very likely that you don't value yourself in the way that you want to be valued. Or if you tend to be someone in relationships who's always the one who loves more, you always love more, you're always the one who's wanting more, maybe you're even the one who's never being chosen, right? You're always like the second choice or the backup plan or whatever. I want to ask you, do you love yourself in the way you want to be loved? Do you celebrate yourself in the way you want to be celebrated? Or do you focus on all the parts that need to be different? Do you compare yourself to other women, to other people, and try to be like someone else instead of really celebrating your authentic self? And that was my journey, 100%. I mean, I think I've told this on my podcast a couple of times, but I used to always date unavailable men. I used to always date men that were not over their exes yet, that were not ready to commit yet. And somehow those were always the guys that I was really, really into and that I wouldn't let go. And it all stemmed from this wound. And this is also where inner child healing comes into self-love. It all stemmed from this wound of wanting the love that I didn't receive as a child in that kind of capacity. It always came from me needing to fix them in order to have my needs met, me needing to give first in order to have my needs met. And I've done so much healing on that, and I've understood my patterning so well that I was able to shift that. And part of that is also really just passing those tests and really just being like, no, I'm not going to settle anymore. It's really the inner healing, the subconscious work, the hypnosis, the coaching, but it's really also being like, no, this is not what I want anymore. This is what I want, and I'm not going to settle for less. But if you want to go more into detail of how that looked like in my life, I think I talked about this on the first episode of this podcast. And the same goes for friendships, right? In relationships, I include friendships, I include love relationships, I include relationships at your workplace. The relationships are always going to reflect what you still need to heal right now, or where you've already done a lot of healing, or where you've gotten a lot of great subconscious programming already from your upbringing, right? Like, just to explain a little bit what I do in hypnosis, we operate from our subconscious mind about 95% of the time. And only understanding what needs to change, what you want things to be different, how you want to operate in the world, in relationships differently, isn't gonna actually bring the change in, because that's just the 5%, that's the conscious part. The subconscious part is being built from the moment on that you were born, even earlier actually, from the moment that you're a baby in your mom's belly. And from there, everything is happening is just programming into your subconscious mind. So if you receive a lot of love for certain things that you are, you learn, okay, that's what I'm loved for. That's what I shine for in the world. And then if you're shamed or just not seen for other parts, then you learn, oh, okay, I'm not loved for being lazy. I'm not loved for being angry. I'm not loved for being in a bad mood. But the problem is, those are all parts of ourselves. We all have everything in ourselves. So we need to do the deep work, this hypnosis work, or you can also do breath work, or let me think, what are other ways that access the subconscious? Feel free to drop me in the comments what are other ways that you reprogram your subconscious. My favorite method is hypnosis. That's what works great for me. That's what works great for the people I've worked with. But I know that breath work, for example, does a similar thing. Of course, also certain medicinal herbs, plants, whatsoever, probably do a similar job if you do them well supervised. But yeah, so that's why I really love working with hypnosis, because you can really get down there and you can really make the changes that are going to affect how you feel and operate in the world, rather than always just working with the surface level or the 5% that are only going to give you 5% change as well. And I've literally had people come to me that are like, I've been to therapy for so many years, and in the 3 months that I worked with you and the couple of hypnosis sessions that we did in those 3 months, I've brought more change into my life than I have with years of therapy. And I'm not saying that I'm doing therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. I don't work with people who are mentally ill, who are struggling with mental disease. I'm just working with people who are healthy and who want to improve their lives. I still learned the tools for behavioral therapeutic hypnosis and for regression therapy hypnosis. But I'm using those tools on people who are in a very stable place in their life and who just want to improve their lives where they are. Okay, I want to talk to you about some truths about self-love. I've already shared a lot, but I want to keep going. Self-love isn't about feeling good all the time, right? I think this is something that people get wrong. It's not that when you've cultivated self-love, you're just feeling great all the time. Self-love is an art of being, right? I have days where I don't feel good. I have days where I feel overwhelmed. I have days where I feel triggered, but I love myself so much that I am putting myself first to figure those things out and to transition those things. And if I can tell my younger self, my clients, one thing, it's you don't have to stay in that rut. You don't have to stay in that darkness. You don't have to stay in that feeling of, oh, I don't feel quite comfortable in my skin. And I think we've all been there. And I catch myself now sometimes, now that I have a baby and I don't have time to coach myself all day long, where I go through 3 days of something is triggering me, but I'm just brushing it to the side. I feel a bit self-conscious around this, I'm brushing it to the side. I feel triggered around this, etc. But then I sit down and I get through it and I find a solution to bring myself back into alignment. And that really is what self-love is as well, right? It's this authentic alignment with who you truly are and celebrating all of that and then finding back to that, right? So for example, in dating, when you met someone and they are taking time to reply and they're not replying to you quickly enough, and you're just feeling this weird, icky feeling all the time. You have a feeling maybe they're not really into you, but you also want to believe that they are. You don't know the truth yet. You go to all your friends, you talk about it, you're going round and round and round. And it's just overall, it's affecting your day. That really is a sign that you can go back to your self-love and use the tools that I can offer in that process. So this is a trigger that you can work through. And this is what I do with my clients. Like, they would come to me and they're like, oh, I feel self-conscious, I feel small, I don't feel good enough because this person isn't really replying, they don't seem to be really interested. And I promise you, this always goes back to a time in your childhood where you didn't receive the love, attention, affection that you wanted. And maybe it goes even further. You make up these stories in your mind why they're not replying to you. Oh, I'm not interesting enough. I'm not special enough. I'm not cool enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not skinny enough, etc. And those are all stories that you picked up throughout childhood that you can dissolve in hypnosis and in the real deep self-love work. And I promise you, after that, you're going to be like, oh, well, I don't even care. Like, it won't even make a difference if this person replies to you, because you come in such a place of high self-love that you don't accept anything in your surrounding that doesn't reflect that. And that was the case for me, right? Like, I went from dating always the wrong people, on staying like in these situationships that I just felt made me feel bad and icky and not good about myself, not seen, not loved, to literally not accepting anything but high standard love and appreciation, and people who were able to celebrate me, who wanted to get to know me, who wanted to see me. And if I then encountered someone who wasn't that, it didn't make me feel small, because I healed those wounds in my childhood. I hope that makes sense. And this is what I experience with my clients all the time. Like, I'll have clients who are like, oh, I feel so triggered and I feel small, la, la, la. And then we do a coaching session with a hypnosis in that coaching. And afterwards, where like she goes back and heals the relationship with her dad, or heals that one moment with her dad where her dad didn't give her the attention that she needed, or where she learned that her dad didn't appreciate her mom enough and she just picked that up. And afterwards, so she heals that in the hypnosis, and afterwards, she just doesn't care anymore. I ask her, like, so how do you feel about this guy now? Has he been texting you? Do you have any answers? She's like, oh, honestly, like, it doesn't bother me anymore. He hasn't texted me, but I've moved on. And this is what real self-love is. It's not always being happy. It's not always getting all the guys or getting everything that you think you want. It's really just feeling so good about yourself that everything that's not aligned just drops off, and that you don't have any hard feelings about that dropping off. And it's really like, I heard someone say this on their podcast of, if not this, then better. And that really is what self-love is. And then the next part, it's not something that you achieve. And I think I've already made that clear as well, right? It's an art of living. It's an art of living, of always coming back to your highest self, of always coming back to your shadow self and looking at that, healing that, asking that part of yourself that you still want to hide from the world what they need in order to shine, what they need in order to be seen, what they need in order to feel confident and loved. The way that looks like in my life, right? I'm going through so many different stages of my life. My self-love journey really started with dating and being like just settling in dating, never being enough for the person that I wanted, and stepping into self-love there. The next part was my health. I went through like 2 years or 3 years where my health was really absolute shit. I was ill all the time. Pretty sure I got like a fungus infection or something when I was living in Paris in like a beautiful old apartment that unfortunately had mold. And that was really tough for me as well. That was like me learning to love my body, even though my body wasn't perfect, as I wanted it to be. I was ill all the time. I caught every single like infect that you can catch. You could literally just sneeze 3 rooms next to me and I would catch it somehow. And that was also a way of learning to love myself in the relationship. I still remember being in Lisbon with Nico and feeling so ashamed of myself, of like, oh my God, I'm not the girlfriend that he wants. He wants to travel. He wants to do all these things. And I'm ill all the time. And then we can't do things. And honestly, my health journey really shifted the moment I accepted that I'm going through a phase in my life where I'm ill and where I don't know when it's going to get better. And I still remember being in Tenerife and like crying under the shower because I had an ear infection. And, in Tenerife, you have like all these hills, and it was just so painful. And I mean, we did go to places, but it just felt so hard. And now in hindsight, that was also a lesson to learn. Like, I should have just not gone onto like these rides on hills and whatever. But and I was just crying under the shower, and I was just like, I just accept that I'm ill. And that's where I also really have to say, I am not a huge fan of this, like, oh, like illness is in the mind. Like, yeah, illness, I do believe that most illnesses come from our emotional world. I wouldn't even say mind. But you can't change your mind without changing your emotions, and your emotions again lie in your subconscious mind. So it's not that easy. You can't, when you're ill, you can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm healthy. That's actually, for me, always made it worse. For me, what made me feel best, or what gave me the most change, is really just finding that acceptance. And I think that's a huge lesson in a lot of parts of life that you can be in. This just like full-hearted, unapologetic acceptance and radical acceptance, basically, and just accepting where you are right now and being like, okay, this is where I am, this is what I'm dealing with. There's this thing in coaching, the difference between problems and restriction. So the restriction is, in my case that I'm talking about now, and the restriction is that you're ill, for example, that you have an ear infection. But what are the problems that stem from that? That's actually what we want to focus on, because problems are things that we can solve. Restrictions are things we can't solve. So that's where the radical acceptance comes in, right? Radical acceptance is, at this stage of my life, I am ill. That is the restriction. That is I get ill a lot. I am not healthy for longer than 2.5 weeks in a row. And the problem that comes from that is I find it harder to be social. I feel self-conscious in my relationship. I feel not enough at work. And those are all problems that you can solve, but because those are all things that you can work on. You can't work on the restriction that you're getting ill anyway, right? That's just a fact. But you can look at, why do I not feel enough? When did I learn that I had to perform in order to be loved? When did I learn that I have to be this extroverted, energized woman? When did I learn that that's what I'm loved for? And I really believe the universe, I used to say this to Nico, I really believe that the universe will just take away anything that you put your worth on, to, at some point, to teach you a lesson that you don't need to be anything or do anything in order to be loved. You just can be loved for just being you, with everything that you are. And that was my lesson in that. So that's just like another example of where I needed to really learn to love myself deeper and differently than I was able to before. And when you do that, and you have radical acceptance, and you can feel good. You can feel good in the meantime. And again, self-love is not about feeling good all the time, but it's about coming back to that state of alignment over and over again. Like, you don't have to feel that stagnant feeling all the time. And I think there's people out there, I remember it for myself, that feel that almost all the time. Like, I used to feel, whenever I was alone, I would feel like almost, I don't want to say depressed, because it wasn't like a full-on depression, but I feel like, in German it's deprimiert, or like it's like depressive, I guess. It's like this gloomy feeling. And I just, that was one of my biggest breakthroughs, to be like, whenever I feel like that, whenever I feel off in life, with my tools of self-love and self-empowerment and self-worth, I can come back to my most worthy self and to my most aligned self, and then things flow again and I feel good again. Another truth about self-love, and I know some people disagree with me on that, but it is, self-love can be selfish, and self-love must be selfish sometimes. And this is where, again, I come back to integrating the parts of yourself that you learned weren't lovable, because most of you, almost every single client that I have, has selfish on their shadow list, on the list of parts that they learned aren't lovable about themselves, on the list of parts of themselves that they run away from all their life. Oh, I can't be perceived as selfish. I need to help out here. I need to overgive there. I need to not take holidays. I need to not go home from work at 5 because it could be perceived as selfish because my other colleagues have to work. No. self-love can be selfish sometimes, and it needs to be, because we all need to be selfish sometimes. If you are afraid of being selfish, if you really don't let any bit of selfishness into your life, then you're gonna be the most self-sacrificing person that you can be. Because you can imagine it like a scale, right? You have super selfish over here, and then you have completely no boundaries, self-sacrificing over there. And in order to find that healthy middle, you need to have a little bit of selfishness in there. If that sometimes means not picking up the phone when your friend calls, because you just need a rest right now and because you cannot communicate any longer after a full day of work, then that is fine. That could be perceived a little bit as selfish, but that's what you need in order to love yourself fully. Or let me give you an example from my life where I can be selfish. I don't like people spending more than 2 nights at our place. I don't like it. Like, it feels like work to me to have people here for longer than that. I like my space. I love just being here on my own with my family. And I just don't like it when there's people over for more than a couple of days. And yeah, is that selfish? Would it be selfish to like not offer a friends, family to stay at my place for longer so they can save some money and not have to go to the hotel? Yeah, maybe, but it's what I need in order to love myself and in order to feel good in my life, you know? And I also have to say, we don't have like a separate room. I think it's different if you have a guest room, but people are living on our couch. And I have clients who have friends spend like a month on their couch and they really don't like it. They have a busy job, they have a busy life. They just want to rest when they come home. And they need to learn that it's okay to be selfish sometimes and tell that friend, hey, you can't live on my couch. It just doesn't align with how I want to feel and the space that I need in my life right now. But again, we need to take that judgment away of what selfish means, right? We learn selfish is a bad thing, but no, selfish is not always a bad thing. And again, there's always scales of things, and there's always different situations, but it's okay to be a little bit selfish sometimes, because oftentimes being selfish means saying yes to yourself and no to the other person. When the other way around, it would mean saying no to yourself and yes to that person. And sometimes that's okay, but not all the time. Yeah, and then the last point is self-love requires deep work. And I think I've touched on that a couple of times now already. I think it becomes clear what I mean. But just to give you a little bit of an overview again on how that deep work really looks like. So when we go into hypnosis, we access a relaxed state of consciousness that helps us access our subconscious mind. And as I already explained earlier, your subconscious mind is where 95% of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors stem from. Like, just think about that. 95% of your everyday thoughts, behaviors, and feelings stem from your subconscious. And in order to make positive change there, you have to get past that conscious blocker. And the way you do that is by relaxing your conscious mind. And that's what we do with hypnosis in the first part. And again, your subconscious is being formed from the moment that you're born. We learn a lot of positive things, right? Like, most likely, if you're listening to this podcast, if you go to my classes, if you are able to afford my coaching, there has been a lot of good things in your life that programmed your subconscious in a very positive way that makes this life that you have right now possible. And I just want to say that as well, because I think in the healing space, it's oftentimes just like, oh, we are all traumatized, we all had shit parents, and all we have to do is heal, heal, heal. But the fact that you are here where you're right now, and maybe you can take a moment and just take that appreciation while you're at home or wherever you're listening to this, you've probably also had a lot of good things happening in your childhood. So, okay, but we had a lot of good things, but we also had a lot of things that maybe are limiting us right now. So all the limiting beliefs that you are facing over and over again, right? All the, I'm not allowed to be selfish, I can't set boundaries, I can't say no, I am comparing myself to other people, I have to be someone else, I can't be too much, I can't be too little. All of that also stems from your childhood and from your subconscious. That's where it's all living in. And then again, just realizing those limiting beliefs, those subconscious patternings is not enough to change them, because it's only 5% of the change that you're going to bring into your life. And I think if you have not done hypnosis and you thought about something, like maybe you realized, oh, I'm always choosing unavailable men. I need to learn to choose available men. Oh, but I'm not attracted to available men. Oh, I need to learn to be attracted to available men. I just need to the nice guy. I just need to fall in love with a nice guy. But you probably realize that it doesn't work. You realize that you just can't fall for the right person. And that is because you're only working with your conscious mind, only 5%. But if you work with hypnosis, and I'm not going to say that I'm in hypnosis, I tell you, oh, you're into nice guys now. That's not how it works. But if you go with hypnosis into your subconscious and heal those wounds where your inner child learned that this is how you receive love, that love for you means rejection, it means not reciprocation, it means giving more than the other person. When you heal that in your subconscious, you're automatically going to change who you're attracted to in your consciousness and also in your present world. I've seen it many, many times, I promise. And and what a good way of figuring that out, what those limiting beliefs are, like one limiting belief that you can figure out is ask yourself, or finish the sentence, when I love someone, ... How does this sentence finish for you? And for me, it used to be, when I love someone, they love me back, but they can't be there for me. That was a huge pattern in my life. Like, I used to have men that did love me in their weird, fucked up way, but they weren't really there for me. They couldn't be stable for me. They couldn't sustain that warmth. It was always hot and cold. And that's something that also stems from my own childhood and from my own patterning. And I had to heal that. And now I can truly say that when I love someone, they love me back. Full stop. When I love someone, they fully love me back, full stop. When I love someone, they worship me. You know, all these things that are really important for a healthy relationship. When I love someone, they want to spend their life with me. Or maybe you have the limiting belief, I can't love too much because the other person will run away. If I love too much, the other person runs away. Yeah, but going back to hypnosis and deep self-love healing, this is where the real change is happening. And I can go into all the details of how your brain goes into an alpha or a theta state and all of that, but that's probably way too much information. If you want me to go more into detail of that, like, let me know. I was super interested in that in my hypnosis trainings, but I know a lot of people don't need to know all those details. But what you can imagine is, we are in trance. So in order to get to your subconscious, you need to go into trance, that relaxed conscious state. And trance is something that sounds like so woo-woo and so like crazy or maybe even dangerous to you. But trance is really something that we're in 50% of the time. When you're on a long car ride and an hour passed in like the snip of a second and you wonder how did I get here, you've been in trance. You're operating from your subconscious mind. You don't have to consciously think where you're going because you know you're just going straight on the Autobahn. Or you are in a movie theater and you're just so submerged in the movie. You're also in the trance state, right? You're feeling the emotions from what you're seeing. It feels almost real, but it's not. You're just in a trance state where someone is actually giving you information that you're supposed to digest. So that's almost like already when you're giving suggestions to your subconscious mind. That's, by the way, also why it's really important to watch out what you're watching. Watch out what you're watching. Because when you're in that trance state, you access your subconscious so easily and you make shifts there so easily that when you watch, 3 horror movies about dangerous sea animals, it's very likely you're going to be scared going into the sea the next time you're on a summer holiday. Much different than when someone just shares a few key bullet points with you of what the movie was about. With hypnosis, we work with that trance state. So we give positive suggestions to your subconscious that are going to help you live your most self-loving self in the now. it's basically like showing your subconscious a positive movie about your own life. And that's where we work with a lot of imageries, with a lot of different senses. And it's the same way that you feel great after watching a romantic comedy. Like, have you ever had like a bad day and you just want to watch Sex and the City because you know it's going to make you feel good? That's also penetrating your subconscious mind and making you feel better. Because you go in such a trance that your conscious mind doesn't quite understand that you're watching a movie right now. So you're feeling the emotions of that and it helps you uplift your mood. And that's what we do with hypnosis, but much more specific to your individual needs. But also important, the same as with a movie, you can always get out of hypnosis. You can always get out of trance whenever you want to. I think that's really important. If you go to the movie theater, you don't like the movie, you can always decide to get up and go. And I think this is like a wrong connotation that people have around hypnosis, that you're being willless or that you don't know what's happening. A lot of my clients, most of my clients know exactly what happened after the hypnosis. They even speak to me during the hypnosis. And they even speak to me when we go somewhere and they're like, no, this is not what I'm seeing. And then we shift. So I just want to really, really make that point clear. You're always in control, even when you're in hypnosis. I also want to speak about where I feel like most people get self-love wrong. And again, going back to the whole point of this podcast is I want to explain to you why self-love is so much deeper than just going to the nail salon once a week or getting your hair done or taking a bath every now and then. I see people get self-love wrong by just focusing on the surface level and just focusing on the bodily self-care almost, right? Like going to yoga classes, going to spas, getting their nails done. But real self-love also includes setting boundaries with people. It's taking the time to look at your deep stuff, at the stuff that's maybe uncomfortable. It's loving yourself so much that you're ready to go through it instead of avoid it. It's authenticity versus perfectionism, because perfectionism also means oftentimes procrastination. There's so much more that belongs to self-love that I couldn't even bring into this one podcast, but I hope it becomes clear more and more. The next point where I see people go wrong with self-love is toxic positivity and avoiding the deep work. Toxic positivity is something that I think is such a downfall for so many people, especially in the spiritual community. And I would consider myself a spiritual person. Like, I believe that the universe interacts with us. I believe that I work with my clients and the universe. I believe that the moment you set a goal, the universe will come and test you and test your subconscious self-worth, your subconscious self-love, whether you think you are good enough to have that in your life, whether you think you need to settle, and so on and so forth. But what I often see online, and I don't see it really as much anymore because I don't follow this kind of content, is the toxic positivity, the staying in the vortex, the staying in the positive feeling. And it's just not what's going to give you the real thing that you want, because you're basically lying to yourself. If you are if you in this toxic positivity, you're basically saying to the universe, my needs don't matter. Because when you're in toxic positivity, you have a need that's not being met, right? For example, you are in a relationship that you are not being treated right. Maybe your partner's always taking, never giving, or maybe your partner is always talking about their ex and not like quite committed to you. And you still say, oh yeah, I'm in a happy relationship. I'm just going to stay positive. I'm going to just imagine how my boyfriend is going to change and how we're going to be so happy. And I'm just going to stay in that frequency. What you're basically doing is saying, I have needs that aren't met and it doesn't matter. And that is not self-love. So let's get real with ourselves, right? It's sometimes hard to get to the end point of where we want to go, to get to that beautiful self-loving state, because that means that we have to take an inventory of our life where we're not loving ourselves. And when I mean we're not loving ourselves, I also mean where other people aren't loving us the way we want to be loved. That's why it's so important to get clear on your needs in every scenario. I have a free worksheet can find that on my Instagram, nora.ring. That is your core needs in dating. And that is so helpful to figure out what you really want in dating and then like match that up with your dating experience. But that goes for everything, right? You can have core needs in your work environment. You can have core needs in your family environment, etc., etc. And that oftentimes when you do that for the first time, it oftentimes means that you're realizing, holy shit, like my life doesn't represent my deepest needs. And that sometimes feels really shit and is not nice. But pretending like everything is positive when it's not is not going to make a difference. It's the same with money, right? If you keep spending and you pretend like you have more money than you have, it's going to get you at some point, right? So it makes a lot of sense to go back to that radical acceptance and look at your bank account, look where you are now, and then be like, does this reflect my needs? What do I need to shift? What do I need to change? Where do I need to get more income in? Where do I need to value my needs more? And where am I spending that doesn't reflect that? I'm completely going off on one here, as always. I hope you can follow. I hope this is not too abstract. I noticed that I find it a bit hard to make things super specific when I'm not speaking to a specific person. But I'm new here. So speaking about, perfectionism, I'm going to just try. And I'm sure my podcasts are going to get better and better. I had that realization, by the way, the other day. I spoke about this to Nico. Sorry, again, going off on one. But I realized that our school system and our society in the normal corporate world, but especially our school system, basically teaches us to be perfectionists. Everyone's always like, oh, I need to stop being such a perfectionist, done is better than perfect, etc. And so many people are not getting the change in their life that they want because they're afraid of not doing it perfect straight away. But that's just not how life works, right? I have a baby at home. The first few times that he lifted his head, it just bounced back down, right? And he tries over and over again, and now he lifts his head like a superstar. But I'm just saying, like, it takes time. You need to do things over and over again. Like, this is my 5th podcast episode. Watch where this podcast is going to be when I'm on episode 100. But I have to go through that process of not doing it perfect in the beginning. And in school, we literally learn we're not in at least 80% perfect, we are shamed, we're punished or whatever, which basically teaches us to not even try. Like in school, you don't learn that you're allowed to mistake. You don't learn that you can just keep on going and you'll get better over time. You basically learn, okay, you have one chance, and if you don't do at least 80% well there, you're not gonna succeed in life. I find that so fucked up. I really had that realization the other day and I was like, wow, that is so fucked up and it's just so wrong. And it's also not how entrepreneurship works. Tangent. If you're self-employed, you learn this even more. You have to do things so many times until you do them right. And you have to fail so many times. Like failure is part of success. Can we just accept that failure is part of success? Like, show me any person that you consider successful, and I promise you they failed at least like a dozen times or even more, much more. Depends on what scale you're looking at it. Also self-love. So this is why I chose to call my coaching self-love coaching, or like to really focus on self-love coaching, because I really truly believe that it's just an umbrella that fits so many different parts of our lives underneath, and not just bubble baths and then doing your nails. Yeah, and just going back to the point of people avoiding the deep work, like I will once in a while, and I'm always surprised because I always think, we had an alignment call, that I'm doing inner child healing, so on and so forth. Why are you surprised now? But once in a while, I have clients that are surprised. Why do we have to speak about my childhood? Why do we have to go into those negative feelings from when, I don't know, my mom abandoned me, or when I didn't get the love that I wanted, or my narcissistic father that used to rage at me. Like, why do I have to face all these things? Like, they're all in the past. I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with them anymore, right? Like, a lot of us work a big part of our life of just forgetting these things instead of integrating them and healing them. But it is just part of the work. And if you are listening to this and you're thinking of working with me and you're like, oh no, I don't want to do this, I really want to encourage you to rethink this, because that's the only way. The only way out is through, really. It really is. And this is real empowerment and real self-love. If you can look at all the shit that's happened to you and you can feel good and at ease in your body, whilst you think about those things, you have made your peace with them. But in order to make your peace with them, you oftentimes have to feel certain emotions again from that time. A lot of us go into survival mode when things happen to us that we don't have control over and we don't feel. And that's why we get stuck in those trauma loops. I'm not talking about severe traumas here, like sexual abuse or anything like that. I also believe that that is healed in the same way, but just not with me, because I'm not a therapist, right? But the same works, like the same principles, the same tools that work for really heavy trauma are the same tools that work for not so heavy trauma. And again, like it's always this thing, what is traumatic, what's not traumatic. It's the same with birth. Sometimes you have people who have a quote unquote like normal birth, I don't know, like 6 hours. Yeah, it hurt, but it wasn't too long, and the baby was healthy, the mother was healthy in the end, and people consider that very traumatic. And then you have people who have like, I don't know, a 30-hour birth with an emergency C-section and 3 PDAs, and they consider that absolutely not traumatizing, right? So no one is to tell you what's traumatizing for you or what like you felt like was a deep wound in your life. But nevertheless, I really believe whatever you consider is a wound in your life is healed by going through it, refeeling the emotions, healing that on a subconscious level, and giving you the tools in your subconscious, right, that make you feel okay and that make you feel aligned and that make you feel loved. And then again, the last one, how I see people go wrong about self-love is they seek the validation and they seek the love from other people first. And that was totally me, like 100% me. Again, just choosing men that I thought were cooler than me, who were, I don't know, better than me or whatever, I put on the pedestal. And I thought that when I can get them to love me, when I can get them to be in a relationship with me, then I can finally feel loved. Then I can feel good about myself. Then I don't have to feel so shit about other parts of myself anymore. Then I can feel pretty enough. Then I can feel smart enough. Then I can feel funny enough, and so on and so forth. And of course, that's not how it works. It's absolutely not how it works. Either the relationships will just not stick, or the relations you will just keep feeling those same feelings and the same lack mentality, the same low self-worth in your relationships, which is not going to make your relationships happy. And that's exactly why, please look at your relationships in your life. It's the easiest way to see. I have a self-love quiz also on my Instagram. You can check that out to see in which areas of life you need more self-love. But really the easiest way to check that is to look at the relationships in your life. How are people treating you? How do you feel around the people that you're spending most time with? And that is like the perfect mirror of where you're standing with your relationship with yourself, because in the end the relationship with yourself determines all other relationships in your life. It really, really does. Okay, and then the last part is how to cultivate deep-rooted self-love in your life. Again, I feel like I've already said a lot, but to just summarize it, you first understand your subconscious patterning. What is your patterning when it comes to relationships? What is your patterning when it comes to the relationship with yourself? Really understanding those and seeing those. So just being super, super honest with yourself. How do you feel? Where do you feel good in your life and where do you not feel good in your life? Where's your self-worth? Where do you people please? Where do you self-sabotage? Where do you feel not good about yourself? With whom and why? And then working with the root cause of those. right? So you can already use hypnosis to just bring positive change by just giving positive suggestions for the negative patterns that you've discovered. And that already works in some ways. But what is even more helpful is going to the really root cause, right? Where did you learn that you need to make X amount of money in order to feel worthy? Where did you learn that people only want to be around you if you make them feel good about themselves? Where did you learn that love means not being loved back? And then healing those wounds in your subconscious. Through hypnosis, again, I can just think of breath work right now, but I'm sure there's other ways to access your subconscious as well. They're all accessing this trance state. But I do say that hypnosis is a really, really great way of really very specifically changing certain things in your subconscious and giving specific suggestions to your subconscious. This is where healing your attachment wounds really comes in. So if you're anxiously attached, or even if you're avoidantly attached, that all comes back to your needs for attachment not being met in the way that they needed to be met when you were a child. And then setting a clear, achievable goal on how self-love would look like in your life if you had it. And that is a huge, really important step. And that's what I always do in my first session with my clients. I always do a first free session with my clients. And in that, we make a very specific goal how that would look like. Because if you don't have a goal, if you don't know where you're even going, how are you going to get there? And also, it's a great way of checking in with yourself and holding yourself accountable. And also we really tend to only see where problems lie. So most clients that come to me, they only describe where they are not loving themselves, where they're people pleasing, where they don't feel good about themselves, where they're never having the right relationship that they want. And when I ask them, okay, and what do you want instead? It's even hard for most people to set a positive goal without saying the word no or not or don't in there. So that's already great for your mind and already opens up so many possibilities. And getting clear on what that actually looks like. So a question that I always ask my clients in the first session, something that you can also ask yourself at home, is if a wonder happened and overnight your goal for self-love, however they defined that it's not always the same thing, came true, right? And you were 10 out of 10 there, but no one told you that a wonder happened overnight that got you there, and you would just wake up and your life would feel different. What would the things be that you notice? And that's something else that you can really do and just journal that out. This is the most beautiful exercise. It gives my clients so much clarity of I would feel happy, I would feel confident, I would look at my phone and I would feel at ease. I would message that guy without fearing if he's going to text me back or if he's going to think I'm weird. I would just live my day and go to yoga and just enjoy myself without feeling self-conscious around anything, right? And then again, you can make that even more positive, right? I would ask, what does that mean without feeling self-conscious? How would you feel instead? Such a powerful exercise. Okay, so getting the goal straight. Always a great thing. Whenever I feel like I'm at a low with something in my life, I set a goal in the way I do it with my clients in the first session. It gives me so much clarity, really. So much clarity. And then, at last, strengthen your relationship with yourself with actionable steps. That's where, when you've done the inner work, when you've done the subconscious healing, you've integrated those shadows, you've set the goal, is about putting action steps in, right? It's really that last bit where you just have to jump off the cliff. You have to just leave that relationship, set those boundaries, even though it feels uncomfortable in the beginning, right? Everything that's new for our brain in the beginning just is uncomfortable. Our brain always wants to take the easiest path, and until you've done it many times and learned that the outcome is positive for you, your brain will always want to choose the old path, even if the old path is bad for you, right? So let me give you an example of that. So for example, if you're someone who wants to shine their light more, right? And you have learned that when you talk too much, when you dress up too prominently, when you dress up too beautifully or too too out of the box, then you're shamed and you're told you're too much. And your goal, though, is to really shine your light more. It is going to be uncomfortable to go to that party in the red dress in the beginning. It's going to be uncomfortable sharing your thoughts on many, many matters in the beginning because you're going to take up space. But after you've done it a couple of times, compared with that deep subconscious healing, right? Really don't forget that part, because if you forget that part, you're just going to snap back into feeling uncomfortable, and you're going to snap back into being shamed by others because your energy isn't behind it, right? Your inner child isn't backing you up. Your inner child is like, no, don't do this. No, don't do this. And putting all their fears on you. So you're going to have to do that a couple of times, and it's going to feel like jumping off a cliff, but you're going to learn that that's what you want and that that's your highest intention. That's going to lead you to your goal. And after you've done it a couple of times, it's going to feel like second nature to you. For example, how that looked like for me, I had to learn to say no to certain people in dating, right? I had to end certain situationships, even though my inner child was so much clinging on to the person. It was like, no, just hang on longer. They're gonna start loving you. They're gonna be into you if you just keep on holding on to it longer. But then I checked in with my goal, and I was like, this is what I want in a relationship, and he's only giving me this and this. So that's not what I want. And I've committed to myself that I'm going to step away if I'm not getting what I deserve and what I desire. And even though it might feel uncomfortable because it's new for my brain, it's new for my subconscious, it's new for my inner child, I'm still going to do it, and it's going to be the best for me. And I had to do that a couple of times until I then managed to attract or find or whatsoever nurture this beautiful relationship that I now have with my current partner. And also part of that is also, for me, was also a big test, or a big jumping off the cliff for me, was also saying no to partners or to dating people, guys, whatever, that were super into me and that seemed like the perfect fit for a relationship, but that I wasn't fully attracted to and that I wasn't sexually attracted to, because that was also one of my old patterns, that I would date people that were into me, but I wasn't really into them, and I was hoping that I could finally be into them, and then I was hoping that I could fall in love with them, but it just didn't happen. And when I really stopped settling and I really learned to jump off the cliff, right, say no to those guys, but also say no to the guys that I was super attracted to, that weren't meeting my needs, that weren't valuing me, that weren't appreciating me the way I wanted to, that weren't psychologically healthy, that's when finally I attracted the partnership that was everything that I wanted. Then meditation is a great way. And I know meditation, similar as self-love, is, I feel like, almost so watered down now and so overused, and people don't actually see the benefits of it anymore, even though they're amazing. Then I think meditation is also a really great way to cultivate more self-love. And I wish I would do it more than I'm doing it currently. I used to meditate twice a day, 20 minutes. Not the case anymore, but every time I do it, it's so helpful, because it really calms the storm, so that you can then plant seeds that are actually able to grow. You can imagine like a lake, and if it's super stormy, the water just goes everywhere. And if you dropped a rock into it, it would just be gone, right? You wouldn't see the impact of the rock. But through meditation, you calm the storm, the lake becomes super still, and anything you drop in there then has impact. You see the ripple effect of it. And I feel like that's really what meditation helps you to do. It really helps you to connect to your truth, and it helps you to find peace before knowing what to do next. And then, of course, hypnosis and self-hypnosis. I have a self-hypnosis library that you can access for $12.99 per month. You can cancel it any month, or you can get the yearly membership for €90. I have a lot of self-hypnosis in there. They're like hypno meditations. If you've been to my classes, they're very much like that. And I'm planning to add many, many more this year. So I would recommend getting in there on the cheaper pricing that I have right now, because as soon as I put all the hypno meditations in there that I know and that I want to implement, I'm definitely going to raise that price. Then speaking to a smart friend or a coach, right? Like, I think that's also an important part. Don't ask people for advice that haven't lived the life that you want to live. Because, right, how is someone going to give you advice on living a self-loving life if you don't feel like they actually love themselves? Like, I really noticed that at some point with friends when I was still dating, that there were certain friends that I just wouldn't ask for advice anymore, because all they did is give me advice on how to play games, and that's nothing that served them nor me. So and then writing a self-love list, also a really good one. It's super simple, but just write a list with everything that you love about yourself, everything that you like about yourself, and read that out to yourself daily, or even to a friend. And when you read that out to a friend, you'll see where you have the shadow. You'll see where you feel shamed and where you feel shame for shining your light. So it's actually a great exercise to read it out to yourself, but also to other people. And nervous system regulation, really, really important as well. This is something that I've gotten more into now that I have a baby, because I get very little sleep right now, and I just notice how good it feels for me when I go on a long walk. Like, literally, when I have a bad day and I feel like this cabin fever and I just go on a 1-hour walk in nature, I feel so much better afterwards. It's oftentimes really the simple tools that have so much impact. And any grounding exercises as well, right? Like just touching the earth with your feet, or going to the sauna is also a great way for me to get into my body. I feel so good after going for like a 15-minute really hot sauna and then showering ice cold afterwards. It really gets you out of the head and into the body. Another way of calming the storm and then implementing or putting in the seeds that you want to plant. All right, this was a long episode. I really loved it though. I hope I wasn't too all over the place. But I really enjoyed this. I hear my baby crying for me, so I'm gonna have to go now anyways. It's perfect timing. And I would love it if you could give me a 5-star review on the podcast. If you do want to give it 5 stars, that will definitely help me out in the future, I think. And feel free to reach out to me with anything that you found interesting, anything else you'd like me to talk about, anything you maybe disagree with. I'm open to hear anything that you have to say. And I'm currently taking on clients again. I have already I'm almost full again with clients that I'm able to take on right now. But in the end, you never know who fully comes through and who doesn't. I have a couple of first sessions next week. So if you're interested, you can get on my wait list. Message me on Instagram, nora.ring. Just message me waitlist and I'll put you on the wait list. And reach out to you as soon as I have space for first sessions again and alignment calls, and then I'm happy to connect at that point. And you'll find everything else in the notes underneath. Have a beautiful day, and I really hope you got some inspiration for your own life on how to implement self-love deeper in your life. I hope it gives you encouragement to look at your shadows and look at the wounds that might be present, and really deal with that stuff, because in the end, that's what's going to get you through to the other end, and that's what's going to empower you to live your most self-loving life, to be empowered in dating, to stop settling for less, and so on and so forth. All right, have a lovely day and beautiful weekend if you hear this before the weekend.